Hi, Cassidy here, and welcome to Sprouting Artistry, a place where we explore what it means to create responsibly. Today, I have a conversation with my friend Valerie. I met Valerie through Bridges of Meaning, and I've just loved the chance to get to engage with her and learn more about her story. But today, I have a conversation with her about a book that she helped publish for the Bridges of Meaning community, which was sort of an anthology of different people's writings on community that participated in the Bridges of Meaning writing server. And so I wanted to talk with her about the process of publishing it and writing for it, and kind of just talk with her about what she's learned through writing and how that inspires her. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. Valerie, thank you so much for sitting down and having a conversation with me today.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here and wonderful to talk with another media professional, so that's fun.
Thank you. It makes me sound so professional, which I'm not so much anymore. But no, I
Oh,
appreciate it.
oh yeah, great.
Well,
Yeah,
I asked you to come on today because you recently published a book,
yeah,
and I wanted to talk with you a little about it and kind of unpack the creative process and what excites you about writing and all of those things. But before we get too deep into that, I would love to give you a chance to tell your story a little bit. Who are you, and yeah,
sure,
what got you into writing?
sure. So originally, for about 30 years, I grew up working with my dad and my brother in media production, um, which was ironic because both my brother and I had vision and hearing issues. I'm not
Oh,
wearing my glasses because people have trouble seeing my eyes on camera, um, but I can see mostly okay. I'm nearsighted.
okay.
Um, and so my dad was an actor, writer, director. He also taught media classes. He taught voiceover, which is, basically whenever you hear a commercial without a person talking to you, that's called voiceover. And, there's many different types of voiceover: commercial, long script, narrative, um, dubbing, looping in post-production film, and all these different things.
Yeah.
He also taught filmmaking. He taught screenwriting. He and that was his passion, was teaching. And so the three of us were like a three-man crew. My brother was, as I like to joke, the smart one of the family. He used to be a video editor, a graphic artist, and audio engineer. My dad would help him with the frequencies and stuff, but the mechanics he understood how to do,
Mm,
and he was really good at it. Um, he had some vision issues, and so he can't really do that anymore.
mm,
Kind of deteriorated a little bit. Um, And I used to do more of the production management, producer kind of stuff. I would help facilitate stuff, book castings, book equipment, scheduling, all the administrative stuff. And I would use help with a lot of the paperwork for my dad's classes, attendance and all that kind of stuff. But, grading was his deal, um, with the different community colleges that we were connected with. And there was a couple arts center that in our state that he worked with, that he also taught classes out of over the 30 years that we were in production. Um, I learned a lot from my dad. So my brother and I were basically mentored by my dad. We learned a lot about people, about the industry, um, understanding how life works, understanding how to network, understanding how to make friends, not only like real, regular life, but also professionally and all that kind of stuff. And it was kind of an eclectic, show busy thing, but the glamour part was working 10 hours a day and having only Christmas and Thanksgiving off because nobody wanted to work with you then. And hills and valleys of income and all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
But it was a very invaluable experience for both of us, very formative for both of us. Sadly, he passed away in 2011, which totally just turned us into a 180 direction wise. My family's always had health issues and stuff, and so my mom had some serious health issues like arthritis and
Mm,
low vision. She's deaf without a hearing aid,
mm,
and so we were like, okay, how are we going to survive? And neither Ian nor I at the time drove because of vision issues and stuff. And so we're like, well, we can't do this media stuff on our own. And I found out through some friends about some programs to help us take care of my mom and actually keep a roof over our heads. So we would have done that anyhow, but this is like we kind of needed help, and so that's what we did. 10 years goes by, and then back in October 2020, I'm writing my little fan fictions for fun and doing caregiving stuff and all that kind of stuff, very
Mhm.
quiet at home life. And she's like, "You should write." And I'm thinking, I'm not a writer. I'm not like that. What are you talking about? I'm just finger painting with words here, with my little story. It's an awful little story, but it's fun. But she's like, you should write, Valerie. I'm like, okay. And so I start, doing blog posts and, working on my fan fiction and, trying to figure out what kind of book project I want to do. I'm like one of the few authors that doesn't have a book project. It's like, really? Um, but yeah, a few years goes by, and you and I are both part of the Bridges and Meaning online community.
Yeah.
And there's a little sister Discord server called the Bitches of Line Writers Server. So I've been on there because I like writing and talking to people and all this kind of stuff. And lo and behold, Josh starts a little writing um, a writing group. So I'm like, oh, I'm all for this, you know. And then we're talking with people. People come and go, but it's mostly Josh and I and a few main people, and then all of a sudden Jordan comes along. And that's the start of the story of the book.
Yeah. That's so
So
interesting.
that's a little bit of a background, kind of a Cliff Notes version for you, but I can go into a little more
Yeah.
details if you wish.
Well, how do you think the media life that you had before you started writing, do you think that helped you at all when
Oh,
you
it helped me
started writing?
immensely. It helped me understand, like, there's the two types of writing. There's writing what you know and writing to market. Writing to market means trying to figure out what the audience wants and write what they want so they will buy your book.
Yeah.
We, uh, So I had, and I also had, because of the media background, I had some marketing. I'm not a marketing college level person or anything like that. Um, but I understood this, the basics of, marketing and how to write copy and how to describe stuff so people will be interested in it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not perfect at it. My dad was way better at it. Um, but I kind of understood those fundamentals.
Yeah.
And so I had a little bit of a leg up on many writers who really are not very comfortable with marketing at all.
Yeah.
Um, and so I I I tried to think of like what would appeal to people and how to present things by how I phrase them and I structure like the book description. It's like, okay, how do I write this book description, make it interesting?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, instead of trying to explain everything, which you can't really explain in a regular novel or something, you try to entice person, like arouse their curiosity for them to check it out,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Is that answering your question?
Yeah. No, no, I think
Okay.
I think that makes sense. And so for you, um, like what were you writing when you first started writing? Like you said, fan
I
fictions and stuff. Were you writing more what you knew, or were you writing more to kind of get something that would brought people in?
I was writing what I knew.
Yeah.
I loved anime and manga, and I was fixated on an anime called Naruto, of all things, which is basically an fantasy action adventure for young boys. But there was like a couple characters in it that I liked. There's some plot holes and stuff. It's one of those. If anybody's familiar with Dragon Balls, it's very much a Dragon Ball. Oh, I'm gonna fight you, and then have this long monologue, and it's about good and evil, and who wins is the right person. Blah blah blah. Action adventure. Um, but so I had ideas. I ended up having two fan fiction ideas that I played around with. One is semi-published, was never finished, and one is just still on my computer living. It's only like 13 chapters in, and of course I have this saga. And it's really just my daydreams put to paper badly, and it's a world building thing. So fleshing out the world building and make it more interesting to me.
Yeah.
Um, it's not. I discovered I'm not very good at writing action. So I like lots of thinky talky stuff, which is pretty boring for most people, but it makes me happy. So that was
Yeah.
an example of me writing for me. Um, I also like, well, I'm a writer. I have a blog. I should like fill out the blog with some pieces on it. So every once in a while, every 6 to 8 months, I would figure out a blog post and I would write something and put it on my website. Um, and it was very much more writing for me um, because I'm a avid learner and I love learning lots of new things.
Mm,
And one of the things my mom told me about that I should write, I did some research and I said, okay, how do you build? Because a lot of stuff is like how to publish. Is if you want to be traditionally published, you need to build a writer's platform. I'm like, okay. And a lot of the stuff that I was finding out about is make it, um, so you try to make yourself into a celebrity, which is good and bad for many different reasons. We can go into that later with the creative, what's good, what's bad, and why people do it kind of thing. But for authors, a lot of blogging advice and information doesn't fit authors very well or
mm,
creative people very well.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so I found some niche books that talk about blogging for authors. And one of the things was that there's several different um, content types you can produce, and one of them is just being like a regular blog for a personal blog. And I thought, oh, I'll just do that. Because I don't know what direction I want to go in anyhow. So I might as well do a personal blog, have like 5 viewers, and that's fine. I'm just building. And so I'm like, okay, I write about this, I write about that, I wrote about bad bananas, I wrote about, you know, um, mm, stuff like an ode to my brother near his birthday kind of thing, and things like that. So it was a little eclectic. I wrote about essential oils, kind of into essential oils. Um, and so, long story short, is that was kind of both. I was trying to position myself as an author, even though I hadn't like written a book yet. And I was trying to create content for my website so there'd be something there if and when I did a project, people can actually go and look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Supposedly you're supposed to do it every week or every 2 weeks or something, and that wasn't happening for me because I was just dealing with life and caregiving and all that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and like writer's procrastination kind of stuff too. But um, did I answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, no, I
Okay.
no, it's interesting. I'm interested to kind of, yeah, see what it is that got you interested in this place and what you find fascinating to actually write. Because I write a little bit myself.
Mm,
I don't know if I can call myself a writer, but I enjoy writing and I definitely am more of that creative kind of write what you know and finding like
yeah.
whimsical ways to think through my life and my stories and other things. And I've done some
Yeah.
like screenplay writing,
Oh, cool.
which I guess you could say has been more successful than my other things, but I wouldn't say I've
Oh,
been like wildly successful in anything except for
yeah.
a successful that I find in myself of like character building, I suppose,
Yeah.
as opposed to like uh, you know, having some like commercial success or something for it.
Mm,
But that's I think that is kind of the best way to start with writing in so many ways because you get to really figure out what you like to write and how it makes sense of your person versus
mm-hmm.
trying to chase some sort of fame or idea of what a writer should be.
Right.
I think there's just something about the process of like writing or any sort of creativity that's always much more than just what you can get from a paycheck from it. And if you're
Right.
chasing that sense of it, it's never going to be a really fulfilling job.
Yeah. Some writers can do it.
Yeah.
Um, but it is a 9 to 5 job depending. It's like some people work early morning to early afternoon. Some people are night owls. It kind of and everybody in between kind of thing. But I th- so I decided that I wanted to write to figure out what I think.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to talk with some people might find it a little annoying is I'll put the last thing first and then go, oh, I should have said this. So like when I'm sending a text or an email, I can edit it. But when I'm blabbing, I'll say the obvious something that should have become later kind of thing. And so writing is really helpful for like ordering my thoughts.
Yeah.
Um, but I also like I never used to be into journaling, and I've got like 3 or 4 journals now for different things.
Mm.
And I had a prayer journal for a couple years, and then I had like notebooks that were like yay big, and I'm like, I have no idea how I'm going to do this for the next 10 years. This needs to stop. So I have like a little notebook, and you know, and it was basically me. It's a journal, kind of basically me talking to God, kind of thing.
Hmm.
And so, but in the journaling process, it it was it was interesting the dynamic for me. It was writing for myself, of like and a lot of people dismiss that, and they shouldn't. I think it's very helpful. It's so I tend to be a verbal processor, so um, sometimes I can't really just talk to people if and when I want to, because sometimes people are just not in the mental space to actually hear all my my blattage, and just being able to dump it on paper, it it helps me process that thing. I'm like, okay, that's done with. I don't need to deal with that anymore, kind of
Hmm.
thing. Um, and it's not like big traumatic stuff. It's just like, oh, somebody got me upset, and then I have to write about it, and then it makes me feel better. Like, you know, um, or it's just like I'm pondering different things, like, like some of the stuff is like building relationships for the future, um, uh, dealing with fame. Do I want it? Do I not want it? Probably not, but it's kind of a necessity in media production.
Yeah.
Um, and we can talk about that later on if you want. I have some definite thoughts on it, and I found a few little Christian books that kind of deal with it a little bit. Um, and I can dig those out and send that to you.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like sometimes I sit and I think about things, not like having great thoughts. I just like ponder stuff, and then my subconscious like brings things to the forefront. It's like, oh, okay. And sometimes and sometimes I just think by writing. I like
Yeah.
I'm verbally processing by writing kind of thing,
Yeah.
and it helps me have some clarity of thought and figure out what direction I want to take my life. And it's like for you know um, during my start of my writing journey, calling myself a real writer, even though I didn't have any books or anything, just a blog. Um, I was like trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted to do in the next 20, 5, 10, 20 years. I was really wrestling with it. I'm like, who the heck am I? I was like, I have all these eclectic interests. And it's like, pick a niche. I'm like, yeah, which 20 do you want? You know, um, and so I did a lot of figuring out and trying to like discern stuff. I bought books, I did online classes, I did quizzes, anything that was about branding or you know, uh, figuring out your niche and all this kind of stuff. I was like very into this, and I was like trying to figure this out because like what am I going to do after you know my poor mom and my sister-in-law pass away? I need to like figure something out so that I can actually help take care of my brother and stuff. Um,
Mm.
and so it's like when I lost my dad, he was like it put everything in perspective for me. It's like, okay, this is going to happen someday. Hopefully, I'll have like 20 to 40 years, Lord willing.
Hmm.
Um, so I was like trying to build for the future. I wasn't in a rush because, you know, not rich or anything, but at least there's a roof over our head, food in the fridge.
Yeah.
Um, our medicine, is covered. Not perfectly, it's like there's a lot of stuff we wish we could have that we don't have.
Hmm.
Um, but we're in a stable condition, and sometimes I didn't have a stable financial life growing up with my dad trying to work, bring in money to pay the bills and stuff. He was a very good dad. He was very generous and kind and loving and um, but sometimes in the smaller markets, media production doesn't always pay well. And people like to
Yeah.
bargain you down to nothing, and I'm sure you're very quite aware of that.
Yeah.
Um, and so you do the best you can, and but so it's like we have financial stability at the moment because of medical stuff. It could poof away.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was like trying to like build for the future, and so I'm trying to think. Well, it's like it. It seems counterintuitive that I would pick writing, which is like one of the most competitive, hard to make money fields ever. And I'm like, but I figured start somewhere and see where it leads. My dad was a
Yeah.
big believer in follow the open door. So you gotta, like Jordan Peterson says, you pick the North Star and you follow that in a very zigzag kind of thing, and um, and it will lead you where you need to go, kind of thing. And
Hmm.
so that's what I was kind of doing. And I'm babbling again, sorry. Where
No,
would you like to
no,
go?
no, no, that's totally fine. I mean, these are conversations, so
Yeah.
please babble away. No, I find it all
Okay.
really interesting because yeah, I think I question a lot of those same things of, well, first of all, the fame question, especially as a
Mm,
filmmaker. It's like
mm.
fame is, um, I don't think any human being is really built for it. Yet there is this
I
sort
know.
of like like how would you say it, sort of that double-edged sword of like to have some success with what you do in an art form comes with at least a piece of that, you know,
Yeah.
kind of fame. And not always, I guess, I suppose, the best cinematographers and DPs are, they're not,
Right.
generally like in the limelight and noticed every day, but there's still some level of yeah,
There's
having
some.
to.
I like to call it building renown. I'm part of the SCA, which is the Society of Creative Anachronism, which is a medieval organization, education reenactment organization, and they have this concept in um, their the known world handbook of like how to be a reenactor, and they call it playing the game or living the dream kind of thing,
Mhm.
and you slowly build renown as a player, they call it, not in a bad matchmaker thing, but more as like you're playing an avatar. Uh, you're playing like someone from somewhere between 600
Mm.
to 1600 in some time period in some place in the world, and you all gather together and you just have fun just playing the game, as they call it, is reenacting the magic and the nostalgia of the Middle Ages. Um, and so I like to liken it. So it's like DPs and crew people and other people in the media industry, they do need to build renown within the industry
Yeah.
to have people want to hire them for their projects. And many people might not understand, and my dad used to teach to his film students, it's not who you know and who knows you. He would joke, a lot of people know me and don't want to work with me. It's who you trust and who trusts you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very relationship oriented in the media industry.
Yeah.
And some people think it's cliquish, and yes, it is, in a good and a bad sense.
Yeah.
Um, but usually the people in the inner circles are really kind and nice people. They're genuinely people you want to work and be friends with.
Yeah.
And that's how the real industry works. Yes, you have the flakes and you have um, the starlets and all this kind of drama and stuff. The drama exists every time you have a bunch of people trying to work on a big project together. It just happens because
Yeah.
people are people. The people are messy. But generally speaking, the way you build renown is that you become someone that people want and like to work with. Um, and that's a fundamental truth. It's not perfect. There's, people like poor Marilyn Monroe who had a whole bunch of issues and stuff.
Yeah.
She did Marilyn beautifully in all her tragic glory,
Mm.
you know. Um, there was nobody quite like her, you know. But the real bread and butter of working in the industry is being someone that other people want. Like Jordan Peterson has one video of a lecture. Part of a lecture he gave is like, you want to be the one invited to the game. That makes you the winner. Not winning the game,
Yeah.
but being the one invited to the table the most times. That makes you the winner of the game of life.
Yeah.
And this is not about people pleasing or sucking up to people or anything like that. It just means that people like you and want to relate with you and play games with you.
Yeah.
Not the manipulative kind, but like a board game. You know, you're not going to flip the table over when you lose Monopoly kind of
Right.
stuff. You know,
Right.
you can laugh and joke during the game and have camaraderie and stuff. And some people get very competitive and they focus on winning the game. They don't understand that there's a social dynamic of like relating to your fellow players, just like in life.
Yeah.
You know, like on a playground, kids just play with each other. There's that dynamic underlying all of our things, and as we're adults, we become more sophisticated in it. But
Yeah. It doesn't go
um,
away. It's still
it
there.
doesn't
There's
go away.
that.
That
Yeah.
dynamic of just like clicking with people and just liking them, you know, that's a big part of our social dynamic, and we
What?
need it. It's not perfect, but it helps us be more what we're supposed to be.
Yeah. And a huge thing in media too, because media, like filmmaking, is so collaborative. You
Yes,
can't you can do it alone, but you can't really do it alone. If
yeah.
that makes any sense.
Yes,
And so
I
you
understand perfectly. Yes.
and
Even
like
in low budget filmmaking, you just pull people together as best you can with all the warts and foibles and vices, and you cobble this thing together. There's a lot of vices that come with the industry and jadedness and stuff as well. But at a core, it's like it's the Blues Brothers. We're on a mission from God. That's what your crew is like. And you got to be careful they don't punch holes in walls to do what you want to be done. You got to watch them because they'll do anything for the project. That's like, we're on a mission from God. That's the mentality is going on. And there's a great bonding experience that happens because of that. Um, so yeah, I'm very much, it is a team sport.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good transition into the book because you
Oh
have
yeah,
just published the Bridges of Meaning writing anthology, which
yes.
was very much a team project. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more how that came to be and how this sort of collaborative nature weaved into the process of making this thing that is now out in the world.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So this is what the book looks like. This is actually the proof book. So
It looks
it's an
great.
orange cover. It's got the little, gray thing. This is a proof copy. And we specifically wanted a bridge because we're from the Bridge of the Meaning community.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to honor that. And everybody's like on their journey kind of thing. And so that's kind of why we went through several revisions of it. But let me back up and tell you the idea, man. So, Jordan, as I said earlier on, Jordan actually joined us and we had a lot of fun chatting with him. So, in the writers group, we are very informal. We chat a little bit. Sometimes we'll write together. Each of us will write our own whatever we're working on. Many times it's personal things, just like you saying, of things that we want to write, just for our own enjoyment and satisfaction. Um, and uh, and then, about two something years ago, Jordan had the idea. Is like, what if we did like a collaborative, community book project? That was his words. I think it's close to it. And we're like, yeah, that sounds great. And so we had a working title of Kaleidoscope provided for me because I didn't know what else to call it. Um, and we worked on it and we promoted it as best we could. None of us had YouTube channels at the time, so we tried to let it out, get it out, the word out. Paul Vandeclay was very kind in letting people know about it through the Q&A and stuff. Um, but it slowly, it took us about a year to like gather people and also for people to work on their pieces. Um, and then we had went to an editing process for 8 months or something like that. And then we went to the final editing, and the formatting thing. Um, it was a little, loosey goosey and, fly by the seat of our pants kind of thing. We had deadlines, we had, timelines and everything. Sometimes we were mostly around them. It's like, things take a little bit of time. We had, and so it was interesting, and things kind of, it was a very collaborative, the three of us had a very good, rhythm and friendship with each other, where we could just all suggest ideas, and most of us was like, yeah, that sounds great, let's do that. So there was no like egos or friction or anything like that. I did kind of wish we had more time because I wanted to get reviews for the book and endorsements and all this kind of stuff like you're supposed to do as a writer, for publication and stuff. But it was a community project. It was done for the love of it and to help promote the what we call the little corner, mostly Bridges a Meaning Corner. Um, but it's like we're gonna publish it at the end of August. I'm like, oh great, I've got a month to do marketing. What am I gonna do now? I've been slowly letting people know, but I didn't have like a full concentrated effort. And it's like I had no budget, so I'm like,
Yeah.
let's reach out to some people and see if they'll like have me on and we'll talk about the book or something like that. And you graciously were like, yeah, this sounds interesting. And I'm like, cool. And so I don't want to do a salesy thing or anything like that. But um, so uh, one of the interesting things is like, I think I was the one who realized it, but I talked about it with the guys, and they were like, "Yeah, we really need this." Is we didn't have anything specifically about estuary, and we're like in all the different pieces. We had a screenplay. We had Chad the alcoholic and his wife had two pieces on relationships, which were actually very interesting and cool. They were it was a writing prompt that they did together separately, and then they came together and shared the pieces with each other. And so
Oh,
that was kind of a very romantic, doing what writing for the love of writing kind of thing. It was a really nice story behind that, and Chad and I talked about it on his channel. Um, but so we had all these eclectic mix of pieces
hmm.
that was the theme we decided was on community. So early on, I'm kind of jumping around. I apologize. This is why I'm a better writer than a talker. Um, uh, but one of the only things we were trying to figure out is what the theme of the anthology would be. We knew we wanted to do an anthology so we have many contributors and many members, and we tried to have a nice diverse amount of members, contributors. Um, but it was kind of luck of the draw kind of thing, who's available, who can do it, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And we realized um, we had to figure out a theme of it, so we picked community for several reasons. I think Jordan and Josh were the ones who like fixated on community, and I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. Because in the Bridge of the Meaning community, community is a big thing. The whole purpose and drive of Bridge of the Meaning is to facilitate in real life community, whether through estuary or just, events and, your festival that you do.
Yeah.
It was, its whole purpose is to facilitate other people finding the same kind of camaraderie and community that they had in Paul Van der Clay's um, estuary, which originally was called the Jordan Peterson Meetup. So it kind of morphed over time into the estuary, so it wouldn't be so focused on Jordan Peterson. Nothing wrong with Jordan Peterson. It's just there was much more things to talk about than just one man.
Yeah.
Um, and so we thought that would be a perfect homage to Bridges of Meaning, to the spirit of our little section of the corner. And we thought that would be a nice topic to do for the first book. If we do more books, that'd be great. We haven't decided whether we're doing that or not. We're just like getting over trying to finish publishing this one.
Yeah. That's It's like you just finish a marathon and say, "Oh, let's do
Yeah,
another." Like I think I need a
yeah.
week to think about
So,
that.
so an interesting thing is jumping back and forward and backwards here. Um, Towards the middle of like when most people had gotten their pieces in and we were in the editing stage, and we had one lady, Laura, who was kindly editing for us. She was doing mostly line editing, which is like checking for grammar, typos, um, punctuation, that kind of stuff. And we had people from different, like we had one gentleman, Julian from Canada. Most people tend to be around the United States. I don't know if we had anybody else from another country. No, we had. So this is a good point to bring in John Van Donk. So I wanted to have more writers, and so did Josh and Jordan. So we reached out to Paul Vandeclay during a Q&A, and he suggested we touch base with um, uh,
John
I'm
Van
blanking
Donk.
on John Fedonk. And so we're like, oh, okay, let's see if we can reach him. And so I reached out to a couple people, got his contact information, sent him a nice email. At first, he was like, I don't really have anything, but here's maybe you should talk to the Banner. And the Banner had recently, within a few months, had published a fantastic article about the history of estuary. Like, ooh, so maybe we could get permission to reprint it. Long story short, they kindly gave us permission. And it was from John Van Dyck uh, saying you should reach out to them and see if they would do it. And they did, and it was really wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, and then we also got the picture rights. Not we don't own the picture right, but we got the rights to print the picture with the article in the book.
Hmm.
That's Justin Wells did the photography for that.
Oh,
And then
great.
in my communications back and forth with John Vanterdonk, he remembered an older piece that he'd done that was more in-depth look on estuary. I'm like, sure, we'll take a look at it. That'd be great. We read it. It was fantastic. I think there was a little bit of smoothing out that was done. Um, and then we were like, this is great, John. Thank you very much. This will be great. And so at least we were able to honor that aspect of the community, which was estuary, which is very much about building in real life conversations, meaningful dialogue.
Yeah.
And that was something that I really wanted us to be able to have in there. And the guys were like, yeah, that would be really good. And so I ended up being the facilitator of that.
Yeah.
That kind of fell on my shoulders because Jordan was pretty slammed was trying to work with all the different contributors in the editing process. Josh was maintaining the um, giving us feedback and doing his own piece as well. He wrote a very fascinating piece on um, uh, how the community aspect of alchemy, which is
Hmm.
like really that's really cool. And so it's a great piece. He's got a he went to college for psychology and stuff, and ended up not liking college because personal biases and all that kind of stuff of the industry or the academic area. But he's really great. Like, both Jordan and Josh are fantastic writers. They're better than writers than me. And I'm not saying that being humble. I just really believe that. Um, and they're very thoughtful and they're very creative and they just, the words just sing. It's like gorgeous. Um, and Jordan, he's actually self-published some books before. So he had the mechanics down of how to do it. And so he kindly volunteered to help publish it under his own publishing thing. And we created a special thing for Write of the Meaning when we finally came up with the name for Write of the Meaning. Because we realized after doing some searches that Kaleidoscope is a very popular anthology title. Like,
I
this
could
is
I
not
could
going to
see that
work.
actually.
Like, okay, we need something else. So I snagged the domain once we thought of the nobody had it. I'm like, okay, we'll show up in Google searches. This is the media for marketing side of my brain. Like, we'll show up in media searches and Google searches and stuff. It's like nobody's got this, and we have the domain, so we're good. And Jordan liked the name so much that he ended up creating an imprint so that we could do the book as an imprint of writers a meeting, so it's
Mm.
its own little section. So he can dedicate it. If we do more books, he can publish it under that
Oh, great.
little um, uh, thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a very messy look
Yeah, of
back and
how it all
forward.
came together.
Yeah. So,
Well,
but
well,
the guys worked really, really hard. Jordan worked really hard. You know, he technically should have been the editor of the anthology because he was doing the editor's job, not the line editing. But he wanted to spread the credit around. He's very generous in like giving credit where credit is due. Um, but uh, the the real editor of an anthology is not the one who like edits the punctuation. It's the one who compiles it
yeah,
and orders it and arranges it and stuff. So
yeah,
that technically he should have been the editor, but he like Lawrence, did a fantastic job calling through all the different pieces and trying to find all the errors for all of us. And that was a lot of work for like, I
yeah.
think it was like there's 9 contributors and I wrote 3 pieces because I was like, I can't write 8,000 words. It's not happening. So I broke them up into smaller pieces. That was my little thing. Like, that's why I have so many pieces. Like, I kind of chickened out of like, I don't know how to make this last longer. I'll just do, because I was used to writing blog posts and blog
Right.
posts are supposed to be smaller.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was funny.
Mm.
Um, Jordan, Jordan has some fiction stuff, and so he wrote one of his pieces, which is like a um, um, not an outtake. I don't know what they call it, but it's something that goes with one of his other stories, but it's kind of like an extra something or other. And
Yeah.
I'm blanking on the term, but it means there's some kind of literary term for that.
Yeah.
It's not an outtake. It's kind of like a fun addition that goes along with the story, but it doesn't fit
Like an
in the story
appendix or
perfectly.
something.
Or what?
Like an appendix or something.
Yeah,
Or
something like that, but fiction.
yeah.
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 So, so, and Jordan's piece is really great. It's literally about, um, the aftermath of an alien attack, and a bunch of these people can't, can't function together. They're all fighting and everything. They just went to, really like surviving and stuff, and it's all written in letter form. It's
Mm.
like this character found little scraps of paper, and so they're chronologizing stuff from their own perspective, and it's just really neat. It's like,
Yeah.
this is cool. So I apologize, I'm babbling, but
No,
yeah,
please don't
yeah,
apologize. This is
okay,
this is totally the space to babble
yeah,
and share. So, no, I appreciate you. I appreciate your excitement about it all. I mean, I
yeah,
think for me, like the question that um, sort of resonates for me is like,
mm,
how does it feel to be a person who's created a table where people can come and play? Because that's what you were saying. Like, we just have this eagerness to like come and play, but now working together to create this like community effort anthology,
yeah.
you've created that space to play. How does that feel for you?
It's really galvanizing and uplifting. Um, I have to give Jordan a credit. He's the one who came up with the idea, and he was the one who did a lot of the facilitating on behind the scenes kind of stuff. And he created a special Discord server just for us uh, uh, volunteers and contributors, so we can talk to each other and have everything in one spot
Hmm.
instead of just dominating the writer server or having stuff spread through all these messages and stuff of different people and all this kind of stuff. So it needed one spot where everybody could just check it and find out what's going on, kind of thing. Um, and it was really fun. It's like um, I really enjoyed seeing what other people created.
Hmm.
It was really fun and neat. I didn't read everything until the proofing stage. There were just some that I kind of read during the editing stage, and I would skip because it was just so much, and I was tight on time, and I'm like, I have to make sure my pieces are good as well, and so I was like, okay, I'll be good. I'll just read my stuff and fix my stuff, um, and but it was it really had that. Um, we're in this together kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was, and even though we didn't have like, it wasn't like a shoot where you're all in the same location with each other. There was that a little bit of back and forth between different members, um, and mostly it ended up being because we were the central figures. The three of us talked a lot and worked through a lot of stuff and figured stuff out, and it was just a very uh, it had a good spirit about it. There was no egos, there was no agendas or anything like that. It was
Yeah.
just like we're doing this together and we're gonna make something, and it was very much about the journey as well as the end product.
Right.
So um, it's one of my it's like one of those milestones in my life. It's my first book has not just this slog of trying to create a book on my own, but creating something, a beauty and um, kind of like a crystallization from a writer's perspective. Like all the you and the other YouTubers create all this wonderful content, and it was a chance for us writers to become part of that space as well.
Right.
It's like, in our own medium.
Yeah.
Um, and it was really kind of nice to here, have this kind of thing. And
Well, because
it
yeah, that's
was
gotta
it was
be.
really very edifying and very heartening experience for me. So I'll remember this for the rest of my life. Yeah.
I think that's the hard thing about writing is it's a very lonely thing.
Yes.
You have to
Yeah.
sit in a room and go through the slog, but something like
Yeah.
this is a very cool participation where you get to feel like you have that collaborative nature
Yes.
and be on that team. Because like, when you're writing a screenplay, you sit and you slog through it and you write it.
Hmm.
But then you always turn it over and it becomes this really collaborative thing that turns into something bigger than what you wrote.
Yeah.
But like with a book, I'm sure that happens too when you give it to the editors and they do all of the
Yeah.
stuff. But there is sort of that main process of just like going through the slog of sitting in a room and like
Yep.
writing till the end. And
Yeah.
yeah, it must be fun to have that space where now it's not just me and my ego doing this thing, but all of us
Right.
together writing this
Yeah.
thing to help give a space for this beautiful thing that is happening sort of in the shadows of,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call this little corner, like estuary.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So exactly, very much so. I it wasn't as it's like there were some quieter people and there were some more active people in the Discord in our um um little writers just not writers Discord but the project Discord. And so I realized quickly on that I need to like I had to probably start a podcast, a YouTube channel to kind of get the word out because like I had no other way of like the nature of Discord is very much everything rises up and out of salient and so you always have to create new content and stuff and I'm like okay I need to like interview some of the other people because other people have very fascinating stories like both Jordan and Emily they are part of estuaries in their own estuaries. And Jonathan Donk is the one who brought Emily, our book designer and formatter, to the table, to the estuary uh, community that he has. And she was ecstatic about the product. And we had a very interesting conversation. She had a rich, full story of her own, which I interviewed her, in a very casual conversation way, and it was a delight. And then David Walker, who I interviewed him, and as a media person, it was fun to have a conversation with another screenwriter because my dad was a writer and a screenwriter,
Yeah.
and he just does it just for the joy of it.
Yeah.
Maybe someday he'll publish it um, as a book in screenplay book format, um, but he's not looking to sell his stuff. He's
Hmm.
just doing it because that's the format that he enjoys writing in.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. And so we had wonderful conversations. So each person, um, I wasn't able to interview everybody because time and attention. Not everybody wants to be on video.
Right.
Um, and but the few that I was able to interview, it was very interesting. I mean, even Dan Biederman, the gentleman who wrote the Banner article, he's he does for his day job is he goes to different what do you call them, dairy farms, and he helps figure out the ventilation system for the cows so they don't
Oh.
overheat and stuff. And so he's telling me all about that. It's like, this is really cool. I've never heard about this. I'm like,
It's
wow,
a
this is
very
neat.
niche job, yeah.
So it's like we had a very wide, eclectic mix of people
Yeah.
doing this thing together. And it was just like everybody has their own little story.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really neat. It's like, this is cool.
That's the beautiful thing about it all. It's like everybody does have these little stories, and then we're
Yeah.
finding all of these different ways to like share them and scale them.
Hmm.
And I think
Yeah.
the writing aspect is sort of interesting because I don't remember where I heard it and who said it, but someone somewhere recently went into my brain that said, you know, the most sincere form of appreciation for an idea or something is a response in art form. And writing is very much
Oh.
sort of this art form. And so to be able to have this sort of creative expression, whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction or whatever, but this sort of
Yeah.
art form of creating something to express um, what you've learned, who you are, put pieces of yourself into these stories. I think there's something very beautiful about that, and I
Yeah.
love I love the conversations part where we can sit and have conversations and just get to know
Yeah.
people's story and understand them as a whole, but being also to have spaces where people can share the things that they create. I find just so fascinating because it tells you so much about a person by what they
Yeah.
create.
Yeah, my dad was a big believer in that very concept is a person's heart, who they truly are will be revealed in what they create. It just
Mm,
they can't hide that wellspring, what's coming out of them. And for good and for bad.
yeah,
Um, and you get a sense of who people are from that. And and what's really interesting is that this thing that didn't exist and then now exists. That's always kind of fascinated me.
yeah,
I'm like, this did not exist before, and now it's a thing. It's
yeah,
a living, you know, piece of who I am, a fragment of who I am, and it exists on my blog or exists in the book. And it's like, wow, this is. I can see how it can get a little addictive
yeah,
creating.
yeah.
It's like it's just going through the creative process and you know just forming something new that never existed before. It's really it's there's something there, and I'm greater thinkers than I can probably ponder through that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, yeah, no, there is something really beautiful about that. Yeah, that recognition of you like participation in the creation of the world. And you say
mm,
wasn't something and there was something, but
yeah,
in the same instant, it's sort of like it slowly became what it was. It didn't just pop up in an instant, and you were
right,
there through all of the little moments of that creation and that
yeah,
development to like let it out into the world. And then once you let it out into the world, well, it's not yours anymore, and
right,
you can't you can't control the what comes of it. That
yeah,
I think that's the scariest part of the creation. But
yeah. It takes on a
that
life of its own.
but yeah, there's that beautiful part too. And yeah, it's very interesting, I think, because creating things has become so easy now, just with the way that
Mm,
technology is. I
yeah,
think learning how to be intentional with creation is going to be the biggest question to like fight that
yeah,
addictive nature of like, oh, do you
yeah,
just want to throw yourself into creation? But like,
yeah,
you can always like spin your wheels of like, well, how do you I think for me, that's always a question. How do you focus in on something, do the best that you can, accepting that there will be mistakes and that that's part
mm,
of growing, but also trying to hone and do what you can to be the best at what you do in whatever what way that
mm,
means. Like I think that kind of scales. And yeah,
yeah,
that's a really interesting question, I think. what opens up the door when you kind of get that bug. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
creating, and how do you
Yeah.
create? And then, yeah, moving into, well, how do you do that well? How do you do that sustainably? Um,
Yeah.
it's not an easy question.
Yeah. I'm very fortunate where it's like I don't need to survive off of what I'm writing.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
other people have to make a living at it.
yeah,
Um, maybe someday I'll be able to. I have no idea.
yeah,
I'm just like, this is where I think I'm going to go in my journey. So I'll follow this rabbit trail and see where the open door leads me, kind of thing.
yeah,
Um, but uh, my dad used to talk about how back even 20 years ago, the it had even gotten more accessible of being able to. It's like the fact that we're having a video conversation on our computers and we're able to like put it on the internet.
yeah.
That's like that did
It's,
not exist for like
yeah.
50 years. That was
Well,
like, you know,
but
and
yeah,
so it's fascinating. Of course, the sad thing is a lot of dreck gets created, but we have our little corner of the internet where it's like they're having these meaningful, um, open, honest conversations, and it it reaches our heart in a way that a lot of the slick stuff can't.
yeah. No, it's
And
interesting. I made a like short film on actual film when I was in
oh,
college, like 16
cool,
millimeter film. And that was
cool.
just like such an interesting experience because you recognize the limitations of what used to be before digital, where it was like you don't
Yeah.
have time to take a million takes. It's very expensive. And then we scanned the film, so we didn't actually like cut it like they used to, but they used to have to go
Oh.
in and like cut things. And
Mhm.
you just, I don't know, for me, it really struck um, like that chord of like, oh, it is the bar of like entry to create things is so much lower than it used to be.
Yeah.
And it comes with all these good things and these bad things. And
Yeah.
I think what it taught me is to take some of those things that you have to do with the older techniques and try to
Mhm.
force them into what you do now
Mhm.
when you can just create without those limitations. And
Yeah.
I think there's that beauty. And so I think there's always going to be that conversation of like, how do we take what we had from the old and sort of that slower haul of how to make things um, sustainable when we didn't have so much renewable
Yeah.
things and use
Yeah.
that to help us really hone so that yeah, we have that intentionality of creating um, with some of those limitations because the
Yeah.
limitations are good things. They
Yes.
help us like they help us think outside of the box and creatively. And
Yeah.
um yeah, I don't know, it's very interesting. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I do. I have two thoughts. One is constraints is freeing. Is one of the things I learned from my dad. Is it gives you arena to play within, so you can figure out what to do with that. If you have endless possibility, you kind of go into decision paralysis. Um, and so I see that in people and creative work. And the other thing is content is king. That's what I learned from my dad. Is like uh, that. One of the things I read in one of the books said that, and this is a truism in the industry, is whatever is most personal is most universal.
Hmm.
So our most personal emotions of like imposter syndrome or joy of having a child or you know um, finishing that writing project that you're doing or whatever it might be, there's a, there's 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 a human connection there that can be resonated with by other people.
Hmm.
And one of the things my dad used to teach his voiceover students is emotion is contagious. The reason why voiceover people get paid is not because they can speak and read really well. They're paid because they can inject specific emotions on command and this is why I'm not a voiceover talent. Specific words on demand. So basically, you know, at McDonald's, we're here for you. Come give us your money. You know, you know. So most people throw away the brand name. A voiceover talent has to hit it with pride and corporate, you know, um, dignity and warmth because we're the 21st century. That's very important now, you know. Um, but uh, the I think a lot of things. One thing, these are random, disconnected thoughts. I apologize. Um, but one of the things that my dad talked about is the difference between computer graphic design for like brochures and cards and magazine ads and all this kind of stuff is you used to have to paste up a board. And there was actually, you would cut out the elements and you would lay them out on with wax paper on a board and you would position everything. There was a certain physicality to that process that actually made people better designers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people who went from that to the computer were better designers than people who learned just by the graphic arts
Yeah. I
computer software because
totally
they
believe
had
it.
a blank slate, they could do anything. And dealing with the figuring stuff out physically help train their intuitive mind to understand what is good, what's good, like Karen Wong would talk about the elements of design or the principles of design, I think she calls them. And they're very much in play in graphic arts. Um, and so there's something lost there, but there's also more accessibility at the same time. So it's kind of a trade-off, and it's not neither bad nor good. It just is.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's wonderful that for people to have more accessibility, I've noticed this trend, just like photography took that trend going from physical film to um,
Digital.
digital. Um, you know, the, the great photographers could work in any medium, but there was just a simple beauty of just like having the cell phone camera be able to take a picture when your daughter is doing something cute and adorable that you need a whole huge system that's not going to come together. You got to unpack it, and the moment is lost, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's that trans. I'm trying to be all sophisticated in the words escaping me, but um, that momentary coming and go moment of capturing an instant, like a wedding photographer would. They're paid not just because they're a photographer. The good ones are paid because they're very good at spotting those moments in the wedding that need to be captured
Yeah.
to live on in memory for people.
Yeah.
And I remember one gentleman who was a half brother of one of the producers we used to know years ago before my dad passed away, and he used to live in my town in Colorado, and he moved to another state since. But he was an incredible photographer, and he was really good at capturing those those wonderful little fleeting moments that happen.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of cool. It's like meeting. It's like mastering the arts and mechanics so you can deal with that moment of catching
Yeah.
that
That like
that
human nature.
magic that
Yeah.
happens in life,
Yeah.
whether it be acted on, video or film, or if just a baby laughing and you know putting a Cheerio in their mouth or whatever it might
Yeah.
be.
Yeah, it's like if you can get the technical stuff second nature, all of a sudden it opens you up to see that human aspect where you're not
Yeah,
thinking about how do I get the right f-stop or how
yeah,
do I do this, but
yeah,
it like flows. But it's something
yeah,
you can only learn by doing.
yeah.
Yeah. I
The,
think it's really interesting. Um, okay, give me 1 second.
sure.
My battery is dying. So,
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna get a plug real quick, but then I'll be right back.
Do you want to pause or?
Uh, I'll just keep it running, or maybe I'll
Okay.
pause it actually, because that might be easier.
Yeah.
All right, so I've asked you a lot of questions. Do you have any questions for me?
One of the questions is a little off topic, but I really love your background.
Oh,
The little
thank you.
flowers and stuff, they're just gorgeous, and I've never seen people do that with their background.
Oh, thanks.
Could you tell me the story behind that?
Yeah, so I've always kind of with my YouTube stuff always had flowers associated. Well, I just love flowers,
Oh,
point blank.
cool.
But with like my YouTube stuff, I've always had flowers associated with what I do because I just think there's something really interesting about like the life cycle of flowers and kind of
Ah,
symbolically what they represent. And so I've just sort
cool.
of kept them in what I do. So with like my information addict, like the logo,
Mhm.
it's like an anatomical sort of like brain drawing, but it's got like flowers growing out of the brain and
Yeah,
sort of like
yeah,
so it's sort of like this sort of like this sense of like this like analytical process of trying to understand information and the way that it can like bloom new things and new
yeah,
ideas in the right process. But yeah, having that
right.
sort of like cyclical nature to it
Yeah,
and kind of
cool.
brought that into creativity. And I always like to create just spaces. I just think it's helpful to create spaces when I'm creating because it helps me to kind of get in a mode. So I've been trying to
Mm.
find different spaces that um, fit with the theme of whatever I'm trying to do and trying to create. And so I found these little flowers at just one of my local shops in my town, and I thought they were like fun
Oh,
and interesting and beautiful.
they
And
are.
yeah, I just thought they sort of fit that sort of creative vibe of like, okay,
Yeah,
they're, and like, especially this development of creation, they're not like real physical flowers,
right. Yeah,
but they're these things that kind of, this artistic rendering of flowers and these sort of like,
yeah,
yeah, sort of like, simplistic but creative
yeah,
ways. And so I just thought they were really good to kind of put on the wall and create a space to like have those conversations about like how do we have these sustainable, creative like lives, whether it's like trying to do it professionally or just trying to embody creativity in our life because we think it's a good thing to do. And
yeah.
so yeah, I just that's sort of why I put them up here.
That's cool. That's really gorgeous. I was admiring them in a couple of the videos that I watched. I'm like, that's just so cool. And I was like,
Yeah.
and so I've always kind of wondered about that as one of my questions. Um,
Yeah, and I
I,
had to hand make them. So they're these like little they're like cardboard. So I had to
oh,
like they were step by step. They're pretty easy, but I had to like
oh,
put them
okay.
in hand and so I don't know, there's something kind of
Right.
tangible about that and I think it
Yeah.
just helps me to yeah, have that space and
I,
I think it's more fun than just a blank wall too.
yeah. Yeah, that's pretty nice. Yeah. I, um, I really admire you because I was watching several of your different videos and I really enjoyed the conversation with Luke. It's
Oh,
like
thanks.
trying to wrestle through the creativity and everything. And I'm blanking of all, I have, at the time I was like, this is a beautiful video with Luke.
Oh,
And
thank you.
you're welcome. And I was like, you know, those are kind of meaningful to me because I grew up in the industry and my dad was a creator. I have a lot of creative friends in my circle, my geek group. We had a thing called the Creative Club for a while that I kind of came up with, and people could write, they could work on crochet projects, they could work on sewing projects, they could work on, you know, homework or whatever it might be, and uh, it was really fun and it was more than just a writers group. It was more of like, we get together and work on the projects that we've been meaning to work on and life has just not been conducive to helping it and we carved out space to do it for a
Yeah,
while.
you wrote about that group in the book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the geek group.
Yeah.
Um, and we haven't done it for a while. I might bring it back again. I'm not sure. Some of the gals have like little babies and so the youngest is 3. Uh, Next month, one of them is going to turn 4, and I think the oldest one, not technically, the oldest one is I think 9. And so not everybody can do it with little
Yeah.
children, but now that the children are a little older, they might be able to participate in it,
Yeah.
and that would be kind of nice for the families in a way. Um, but there's just something dynamic with like even from a young age, were kind of, in order to keep us mentally engaged and physically engaged, arts and craft projects come about. And I've never been an arts and craft person per se. I remember one time my dad was directing a play, and we had to paint a water gun to make it look like the murder weapon in this mystery farce. And um, I remember seeing it was one of the first crafty things that I did that I actually really, really enjoyed. And it was just painting it with the paint and being very careful of the different uh, sections of the gun. And it was just a water gun, but it was a safe thing to do for on stage instead of trying to get an expensive prop gun, which we didn't have the money for, the budget for. It
Right.
was a little community theater,
Yeah.
um, and it was kind of fun and neat. And I just remember the joy of doing that, and that kind of stuck with me throughout my life. I'm like,
Mm.
I should do more of that. I used to color, but I kind of got out of coloring for a while, and I gave my coloring books and my coloring pencils to my friends. And I was coloring before it became a fashion,
Yeah.
before it
In the
became a
in the
trend.
2000s, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was back in the 90s. I was like, I had my coloring pencils and I had my coloring books, but they were, um, they weren't the adult coloring books at the time. They were just printouts that I had of an anime called Sailor Moon.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
colored my Sailor Moon pictures. I was very happy about this. Um, but I enjoyed that as well. So that was one of the crafty things that I did that brought me joy and kind of like it made me forget about all the other stuff that I couldn't deal with at the time. Not in a
Mm.
bad way, but just like life in general and medical stuff and blah, 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 and money issues or whatever.
Yeah.
I just, for like an hour, I just, color and, or whatever I was doing and write poetry or something like that, 'cause all little preteen girls always write poetry for some reason. It's a thing we have to go through.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's our
and yeah, it's like,
yeah, our stage. The
yeah,
poetry stage.
a stage, the poetry stage. Yeah, my my dad was very supportive, but he was like, I am not a poetry person, so you do it, enjoy it. I'm not gonna get it. It's like but yeah, so it's like this. I remember Chad and I talking about him and his wife. So writing for them was more of a relationship building thing. They started doing it when they were dating,
Mm.
and so he always wanted to write, but he never knew how. And she's like, "You don't need to know, just write." And that's okay. And he's like, "Yes." And so they would have a book. He talks about it in his video that he had a book. She had a book. It had writing prompts, and they would pick one, and they would separate somewhere within the house or the restaurant or whatever, and they would write their little pieces, and they get back together, and they would share their stories with each other, and it would be
Mm.
kind. And so we have one of the first ones that they did together in the book, and
Uh,
at first I was like, it's not community, but it was, but the fundamental foundation of community is relationships, and the stories are very much about relationships,
yeah.
good and bad and
Yeah.
interesting kind of thing. And I was like, that's cool, and they were actually very well written. I really enjoyed them. They're both fiction stories, and it's
Yeah.
kind of just cool. So I'm very glad we had that in the book.
Yeah. It's a beautiful backstory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, I had another question for you.
Yeah.
Is you kind of going through the same kind of life cycle I was? I had more caregiving for my mom, and then eventually my sister-in-law. She developed some health issues. Um, but you have a little baby,
Yeah.
so you kind of you're juggling uh, real life caregiving needs with keeping that creative aspect of your part of yourself alive through your YouTube channels and whatever you might like to do. So um, how I I got the sense from some of your videos, like one with you and Ferdy, that you actually consciously tried to figure this out. And I'm curious if you can explain your thoughts on that. how
Yeah,
you
like
figured out how to balance the two and understanding prioritizing your daughter, of course, and your family. Um, but how do you keep that alive and juggle it and all that kind of stuff? Because I'm, I, a lot of the books I read about writing is very much about trying to juggle life with writing or a creative endeavor.
yeah.
And I think that might be helpful some.
Yeah. Well, the truth is I haven't figured it out fully, but I'm
Oh,
trying. I'm trying. I think ever since I was young, my parents always told me I was a very creative person, and
ah,
I tended to believe them.
yeah,
Whether that's true or not, I think it is true, but I tended to
yeah,
believe them, and so it became um part of my identity, I guess, and the part that I
mm,
tried to foster by creating connections with creativity. And as I in the last 5 years or so, well, like all through my 20s, I basically went through like a journey towards a career in a creative
mm,
field. And
mm,
then towards the end of my 20s, I wouldn't say gave it up, but
mm,
folded my cards so that I could start a new life, basically.
yeah,
Be in the Netherlands,
yeah,
being married, being open to children, excuse me, being open to children, like even being
yeah,
open to marriage was like a whole thing that was sort of like, okay, I'm putting down
yeah,
the cards of what I had before for this thing that I didn't necessarily plan, but seems like it could be a whole lot better. And so maybe I'll get this creative thing later down the line, or maybe not. But
mm,
you know, I'm taking the risk, and I'm doing this thing that I
yeah,
seems more beautiful than the path that I was on before,
yeah,
which is a hard thing for me to say because there was so much beauty that came from like working professionally
mm,
in entertainment and being around creative people and just throwing yourself completely into projects and
yeah,
so now as a as a wife, a mother, a expat, you're realizing, oh, okay, all of this like creative aspiration, ambition that I
mm,
had, it kind of has to stop to
mm,
really understand what it is to live life. And if you, I think I have it in my head that if I'm ever going to be a successful creative, I have to really live the life that I'm living
mm,
as earnestly as I can, and then
mm,
maybe I can write about it and
yeah,
have that shape like this deeper sense of like what it is to be human. Um,
right,
and so I'm just trying to do that, and so that means like I can't create the way that I used to, and
mm,
I have to be willing to live in my limitations and just
mm,
allow that to shape me, but as
yeah,
I do that, try to take little steps that get me closer to um, some potential
mm,
future idea of creating. So a lot of what
yeah,
I create now, especially creatively, I mean, I do obviously put out these conversations, but um, I don't know, I don't see them as creative very much, as more as just like collaborative and conversational. I
mm,
obviously have like my own sort of creative flares with it, like obviously the flowers and the way that
yeah,
I film things and do things. There's a certain level of creativity that comes into that, of like framing how I'm going to play with the medium of YouTube. But you know, I've written some things. Some of it I've made public, some of it I've kept private. You know,
mm,
I've written screenplays, you know, and then I have a documentary film that I have to figure out what to do with because
mm.
by the time it was finished, COVID happened, and then
Oh, yeah,
my whole life switched, and now it's like, okay, well, I have this thing that my career built up to, and what do you do with it now, and how do you do that well? And I don't
yeah,
really have the answer, but you know, there's always that tension of like, you know, I don't know, I've always been like a very ambitious person and I didn't want to be famous, but I wanted to be kind of how you were saying, a person of renown where, you know,
yeah,
I could at least have a name to do things. And I just really wanted to be so good at what I did.
yeah,
Not, yeah, just because I think there's value in doing things really, really well.
mm,
And I do think, I wouldn't say I'm the best filmmaker in the world, but I think generally it was just that art form was something I fell in love with. And when I
mm,
was in my lane, I could do it really well.
mm,
And so having to give that up to take on motherhood has been sort of like
mm,
a tension because I think motherhood has come so naturally to me in a way that nothing else has, where it was just
Oh,
really like this love of like, I was telling somebody, it's like it sounds so stupid, but you get so much fulfillment just taking a spoon and putting it in that little mouth that
aw,
you can't really. It sounds stupid when you say it. I understand it sounds stupid, but you just feel like this like love, and
yeah.
it kind of, I don't know, and I don't know if it's because I'm American and there's a sense of like you have to do great things, but that
Mm,
sense of that ambition, I think has
mm.
died in me a little bit. It's like, okay, if no one ever sees my film, I don't think I'll regret it my whole life. I think
Mm,
it'll be just fine, and I think I can live a beautiful life anyways. Yet there's
mm,
still this part of me that says, but I want to do the best I can with the thing that I did before. And so
yeah.
learning how to close off my old life in the way that I did things, live my new life to find stability and um, responsibility in this like
Mm,
whole new set of roles that I've taken on, so
mhm,
that eventually, if a path opens to give me a taste of this old life, I'll be
mm.
able to handle it at least somewhat. That's kind
Yeah.
of how I think about it. And I by no means have figured it all the way out. And
That's right.
I think it, it feels like I'm in a new normal now because if my daughter just turned 1, and so it's finally like, okay,
Aw,
you've had a whole year of living in the same place, being with the same people, well, 2 years, and doing sort of the same pattern. But
mm,
every year is going to change because she changes so much. And so
right.
I don't really know exactly what the future holds with all of it. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's level at which that I know that creating in some form helps me be a more balanced person.
Mm,
And so at this point, I'm trying to find ways to create and play with creation, but I
mm,
don't always have to have it be in sort of some professional form where it's gonna
right.
lead me to a career. Although I think I would like the idea of like still being able to have creative things and do creative things as a career, or in some fashion or another. But will it ever happen? I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, and how it will happen if it does happen, absolutely no idea. But
Yeah.
there's kind of a beauty of the way that um, sort of things have become so accessible. There are
Mm,
so many different ways to make uh, creative things possible.
mm,
And yeah, I'm just trying to be patient to understand not what is going to be the most successful on sort of like a monetary level or a success level in,
yeah.
like word of mouth or whatever, like virality, just but what is really valuable.
Mm,
And how do I how do I enter that struggle of like learning how to create value even if nobody is watching it? Like even if I just
yeah.
keep it in my my Google folder and not
Yeah.
release it. Like, how do you enter that process? And then hopefully,
Yeah.
yeah, some of that can go out of the world, and hopefully the stuff that's not just self-serving, but actually helpful for other people. Because that's always
Right.
what been driving me to create is people and like
Mm,
how to understand people and how to help people. And
mm,
so, as much as I think it would be nice to it's always nice to hear when someone is impacted by what you do and what you create, but more importantly, I like it not because, oh, it's you like me, but like,
yeah.
oh, like it's helpful to you, it's not just self-serving to me and my ego, if that makes any
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
At least
It does.
that's what I aim to do, that's what I hope to do, although
Yeah.
I'm sure I fail at that too.
Yeah. With none of us are quite perfect, and I really found what you said very edifying because I'm kind of in this spot in my life where it's like I had to kind of figure out a direction to kind of aim towards, and then I know in my back of my mind that things are going to change as they evolve over time. And I actually wrestle with the whole fame thing a lot
Hmm.
because, um, you need to be someone of renown in order to get the next gig or for people to want to, buy your book, and it's like, who are you kind of thing. Either the content sells it or you sell it or both.
Yeah,
And we're
it's
very
usually
much
both.
about a celebrity culture. And I had a lot of thoughts about that, and one of them is, you know, Paul Clay has been a very good barometer for me of like he's dealing with his small escalation into YouTube
YouTube fame.
fame in our little corner of the internet really well. And I take him as a role model, as not to let it go to his head, serve his little church the best way he can, put their needs above his own, um, his own wants, I should say, probably, because he still needs to take care of himself, his family, and his wife and
Yeah.
stuff. Um, but he doesn't go climbing up the hierarchy like everyone else. And he says it's nothing wrong with that and climbing the hierarchy. Um, then I ended up deciding to start two YouTube channels. I know one is enough work, but I decided to do two because one, I needed one for the writers' of meeting to kind of help promote and explain what's going on to people. Um, and that was actually prompted by one of our volunteers who was going to help with marketing. Unfortunately, had some family medical stuff and had to bow out. And really nice guy too, great guy. He helped a little bit as best as he could. And I'm like, okay, the ball's back in my court. I got to do something. I guess I'm going to do my podcast and I'm going to do a writers and meeting podcast at the same time because I'm crazy like that. And um and I I made myself I figured, you know what? I can probably do maybe one or two videos a month for each. I have not stuck to that. Writers and meeting got a little more creative work done to it than my personal fellowship channel. Um, but what I learned about is that podcasting um, is a good networking tool, not in a sleazy way, but in a genuine having good conversation with people way. And since I don't drive and getting around town is not always the easiest, I can kind of get a lift and you know
Through
um,
the internet.
or an Uber and go to have a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Not everybody's available to have coffee.
Yeah.
But sometimes they can make time for like an hour podcast, conversation.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm just a little tiny channel, both of them are. And I was thinking this is my way to build renown, supposedly, according to the books and things. Um, but I decided to try to make it about what I really, really like to talk about. And one of them that I really resonated with you from an early time um, was your information addict is I actually enjoy learning.
Yeah.
I enjoy learning for discovery of new. I always get curious about new things. I'm reading about 10 books right now, which like I don't know why I do this to myself, but I always find interesting books and I'm like, oh, I studied this, and then I go back and forth to different things.
I do the
Um,
exact same thing. It drives my
yeah,
husband crazy. He's like, "Do you ever finish a book?" And I'm like, "I do."
I do. It takes a while, but I
Yeah, but I
do.
do finish them.
Yeah, and I just like the variety
Yeah.
and the different interests, and some things I'll just spark an interest in me and stuff. And I like I want to make. I was trying to think about building renown and fame in a healthy biblical way.
Mm,
And I read some books and stuff. Very little talks about how to do it in more of a Christian biblical perspective. There's one little ebook that I got, which I'll have to share with you later. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it had a couple small little chapters about dealing with marketing as a writer and and as a Christian writer. It's like how do we deal with like chasing after fame, the brass ring, and yet building renown for ourselves so that we can actually sell books, and it's the same in the industry. And I thought, I thought it's really easy to chase fame for all the wrong reasons, and I am
yeah.
very prone to this. I'm very like,
Mm,
I want to be of someone of great renown. I want people to know who I am,
Mm.
and so at the same time, I don't. It's like I have that weird um, oxymoronic, you know, uh, thing about me is I'm a very private person, but because of the book, it kind of prompted me to get out there and to just start talking to people. And I want to talk to people like yourself who I just generally like and admire. And I thought
Mm.
you'd be a really nice person to talk to. And then it came together, and I'm like, this is really cool. So I got to talk to Karen, I got to talk to Chad, I got to talk to you, and I'm like, this is really neat. It's like I'm part of the community. I'm on YouTube now. I'm real, not just a Discord voice.
Yeah.
You know, and and I I kind of like settling myself down in the is like, you know what? Pursue what's interesting. You don't have to pursue your passions, but you can pursue what's interesting, and it will lead you somewhere where you'll be happy.
Mm.
And it won't be like perfect, you know, fame, riches, and glory, and all that kind of stuff. But you will be able to talk with interesting people that you want to talk to. Um, you, you may never get the YouTube numbers, which I'm not really concerned about the YouTube numbers. I'm more in uh, trying to make sure I have proper engagement because that's the algorithm now is shifted away from chasing the big numbers to, and the big numbers impress, they still do. Um, but I thought, let me just really connect with people, and I'm trying to get the two videos that I've done of different interviews that I did. I gotta finish them and do the transcription for them and trim them. I don't do
Yeah.
editing. I don't know how to do editing. I'm not a technical person, so I was like, I can trim it in the StreamYard thing, and that's about it. It's like that's all I know. Um, Eventually I'll get there, but for now I'm like, I don't know the technical stuff. This is the domain. Yeah, it's like I don't know what all this stuff is. I'm learning,
Yeah.
but um, fame. I was thinking about it a lot, and there's some books and stuff to talk about being a micro celebrity. The concept of having like a thousand super fans.
Yeah.
Um,
I've heard about that.
and so it's basically, for those who don't know, it's just basically being in a niche and just really connecting with maybe a thousand people, maybe a little more, but not too many. That way you don't have the huge skyrocket of Jordan Peterson's fame or, even Paul Vanicklay. You have just, you just have you can relate to them and talk to them as a real person like you and I are talking. And it's not this weird, parasocial thing, which there's a dynamic where it's good for marketing, but I don't know if that's really good for us as a human being. It's like Chris Grimwald says, embody. It's like virtually, virtually not alone kind of thing. And I so it's like a lot of our little corner, especially the Bridge of the Meaning corner, it's helped shape my thinking of how to deal with this dichotomy of be famous but not be famous kind of thing.
Yeah.
And one of the things is just the old truism is just be yourself. It's like really be genuinely yourself, and you'll attract the people who are like-minded, and the people who are not like-minded, they'll be kind of curious about you, but they'll follow the other people that they're more interested in. you know, and
Yeah.
that's fine. It's totally fine. So that's a few of my thoughts. They're not deep, profound thoughts. They're just something that I wrestle with, and I I just have that vice in me as I want to be because I just have such a mundane life, and I had a
Mm.
taste of the glory of working in media, and it's like, yes, they know me. So it's like I'm the book girl now.
Yeah.
God help me, but you know, I was like, I but what's really fortunate for me is that I've come out of my shell in the Bit of the Meaning corner
Mm.
and to what I consider, even though we're a bunch of quirky people, as far as the internet stuff goes, it's I'm probably amongst the safest people I can be amongst because we try to actually have real conversations. We're not into this internet nonsense that goes on. There's still some of that,
Yeah.
but not very much. It's like I can just be myself here. I don't have to be perfect. You
Yeah.
know, I I could just be one of the people,
Yeah.
and um, and it's been very heartening and grounding and centering for me to like come out of my private shell of like hiding on, going on, not revealing my real name online, not showing my face online. And one of the things that changed me is getting this green screen
Yeah.
that goes on the back of my chair. It's a little pop-up thing. Because it's like one of the reasons I wasn't really going online was because not only was I just shy, but also it's like I didn't really want the internet to see my bedroom. It's like none of their business. Like I have a small little apartment with my family that I live with,
Yeah.
and I don't really have the space and a nice and so I originally was gonna have backgrounds and all this fun stuff, and it just didn't work. It just all picoulated around my
Yeah.
headphones. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I used to be in media production. I'll just go with the green screen. It's fine. This will be my signature.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah. I was like, it's whatever. And it's like, um, it really freed me up to be more self-confident and join the online conversations with people. So I feel much more comfortable. It's like I can just be myself and not worry about what's behind me and the trappings of my life coloring who I am kind of thing. I can just be
Yeah.
my, it's like, just be who I am kind of thing.
Yeah.
I know that was a rambling rant, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I'm probably not the best person to give advice about how to be successful on YouTube because I think often I purposely do things that I know aren't right for the YouTube
Yeah.
algorithm because
Yeah.
it for me, I don't think I ever use YouTube as a place to get my renown. I'm sure, like, I know myself, I'm a very ambitious person. I think I also wanted to be a person of renown in some sense, but
Mhm.
I think for me, a lot of that was like behind the scenes creative, like creating movies and things. And the YouTube part was actually just this process of how do I practice being able to have difficult conversations
Mm.
about ideas. Because I was in an
Yeah.
industry where, there is some animosity to religion and conservatism, and I was sort of
Yes.
both of those things. And I didn't
Yeah.
want to be antagonistic against that or create issue, but I wanted to be able to be honest and to be forward and have conversations. And so having this
Yeah.
little space that was, semi public, like, I mean, well, I guess it was just public, but I didn't go around promoting it necessarily, but I made it open enough where it was like, I'm not hiding what I am, but I'm also giving a
Mhm.
space to have these conversations and practice. And I think in the back of my head, you see people like Joe Rogan and all of, Jordan
Yeah.
Peterson's of like, well, there are people making this successful, like having these conversations. So
Mhm.
in the back of your head, it's always like, something could hit and it could work, but I didn't really want that. I mean, not that I wouldn't have wanted that at some point, but I didn't want it right away because I I knew that if I went viral tomorrow, I couldn't handle what that would mean. I think I
Mm.
needed time to really figure out how do you even have these conversations? How do you practice on the small
Mm.
stage so that
Yeah.
in the event you ever get lifted up the hierarchy, you have
Right.
something to balance you out where it's not just like following the audience wherever they're leading you. Because
Yeah.
that's
Whatever their whims are.
because that can be really tricky too.
Yeah.
So it's like I never look at the data really.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know what my most rated video is.
Ah.
I don't know how many views it has. I mean, I probably could guess some things. I think a lot of my deconstruction videos probably get more views than others, but I
Mm.
don't really know. And so
Good.
that's sort of one of those things where it's like, I know intellectually on a marketing like business standpoint, that's not a
Mm.
good thing. I should know because performance matters. But I'm also,
Yeah.
in a certain sense, it's sort of like, I would rather struggle in success metrics, numbers, engagement, all of those things,
Mm.
and really try to understand what the craft is and how to be valuable in that,
Mm.
than
Yeah.
do it the other way around where you get really successful and then you have to figure out on a big stage how to do that well. Um,
Right.
I think the content part is the much harder part than figuring out the algorithm, because you hire the right person, they can do that for you really easily.
Yeah.
And like there are
Yeah.
certain things that um, are going to be more clickable. But
Yeah.
there's this question I've been asking a lot about, because I watch a lot of like business things about media and YouTube, because I
Mm.
just find it fascinating and interesting. And a lot of it's about like attention. How do we get people's attention? How do we harvest that? And it's an understandable conversation, but I don't think as creators we're having the conversation of, well, how do we harvest attention sustainably instead of at the
Mm.
expense of your audience, but really at the value of the audience? Because
Yeah.
similar to what Paul Vanderklay does, I hope that what happens when people watch my content is not that they just want to sit and watch more content. I hope it
Eh.
makes them like say, oh, leave and go do something else, and
Yeah.
by understanding stories and connections and um, those sorts of things. But yeah, I think sometimes the question by creators is not being properly and responsibly placed, where it's like, how do I get as many views as possible? How do I get people to come back? Instead
Yeah.
of like, well, how do you do that in a balance that services what you're actually about? And and how do you know, how do you move towards giving something more and more value instead of just more and more clicks? Because those two things are
Yeah.
not inherently connected.
Yeah. It's very well said. I really, really like that. I was, I, I had a lot of freedom to make the website, and the guys just kind of going with almost anything I threw at them, because they're like, "Yeah, that sounds good to us." You know, it's like you do the marketing, we'll do this other stuff. But one of the things I put on the Writers of Meaning website was pursue meaning,
Mm,
and that had deep meaning to me as like don't go chasing after the clicks, but I didn't think of it that way.
yeah.
So I'm really glad you said that. Pursue what's meaning and the rest will follow as the ultimate good will come from that.
Mm,
And um, and that's kind of what I was doing with my uh, channels, even though it's a very slow start. I only have a few videos on both of them. Um, and uh, the Writers and Meaning is a little bit more self-promotional than Noir Fellowship. But I was like, I'm not going to get into this creator content um, grinder thing of trying to create content. I'm like,
yeah.
I can't function that way. I don't even do that with my blog. And uh, and I'm like, I'm just gonna like have conversations with people like yourself and other people who I want to talk about learning and a learning journey and just like things that interest both of us kind of thing. And uh, the other thing was like I had a thought and I forgot what it was. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
It might come back to me a little later, but it was basically echoing what you were saying about creating more sustainable attention. Um, and I kind of made a decision, even though I'm prone to want to chase the brass ring, is to not chase the brass ring. Not not go into the creative, you know, create lots of content and lots of things will happen. There is a truth to that that I discovered in one of my readings of some book or something that the more content you create, uh, the greater chance of higher quality stuff you will create.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
that's just because you have more practice in it, right? The more that you're
yeah,
creating, the more practice you're doing and all of that.
and then all of a sudden things gel, and
Yeah.
then you create a higher
Yeah.
amount of quality stuff. When um, but the other thing was like, well, I just don't have the time to do that, and I'm just like, this is more of like, as we were talking in the beginning, is like, do you write to market or do you write for yourself? It's like,
Yeah, well, and
um,
I think in your situation, like being this caretaker, you
mhm.
don't just have yourself to think about,
Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
that's what I think I've really learned being a wife and a mother. It's like, oh, wait, I can't just think about myself. And that's in like the good and the bad. So it's not
Hmm.
even just like, okay, I can't pursue writing, but it's like if I pursue something, some sort of creative endeavor,
Hmm.
the good affects all of us and the bad affects all of us.
Right.
And that,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, that weight, it can be debilitating, but I think if harnessed well, it can be the best sort of how would you say it, like filter
Mm.
to what is worth pursuing and what is worth your time. And
Yeah.
I think for me, I found that anything that I've done, whether um, it's seen the public or not, has been a step to shape me to understand what success is and how to be more of the person I was always supposed to be.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so it's never a loss to me. Like
Mm.
there are things that I'm like, ooh, well, maybe next time I would do this differently, or I wish that had turned out better. But
Yeah.
again, it was sort of like it's each a step in a thing that leads you to where you need to go.
Mm.
And like, yeah, you kind of have to have a trust in that process and just try what you can in the moments that you
Yeah.
can. But
Yeah.
when you're not your own in a sense, when it's not
Mm.
just you and
Yeah.
only you,
Right.
you have to be willing to say, um, yeah, I'm not gonna be able to be exactly this ideal for the
Right.
sake of others. Like
Right.
heard Chris Williamson and something talk about how like when you're looking to be successful at anything, you have to realize that you are going to then have to make the trade-off to be unsuccessful at other things. If you want to be
Mm.
successful in A, you have to be willing to suck at B, C, and D to get A.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting because I think it is somewhat true. And when I did that calculation, it was sort of like, okay, I'm unwilling to sacrifice being a good mother and a good wife to be a great filmmaker.
Mm.
And so I'm going to have to suck at C to be good at A and B.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's just the time and the place. But there are certain
Yeah.
things that I can still do to kind of um, find a love for the medium and try my best to honor that piece of me that
Yeah.
I used to be, whether it comes back or not. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's life. And I think I don't know, in America there's such a celebrity culture that you think,
Yeah.
yeah, there's something like some brainwashing that like, oh, I can only be helpful and fulfilling if I do something great in the world and make a big impact. But
Right.
I think that the truth is often the people you never hear about in your communities are the one who
Yeah.
do way more than the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world or
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whoever ends up in your news. There's just such a different level of impact that has on that
Yeah.
greater level. And I think
Yeah.
I'm learning to accept that and kind of take that sense of like, to be a person of renown does not mean I have to have my name in lights.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
it's there's I think there's a deeper sense of what it is to be like a very valuable person.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be on a world platform
Yeah.
acknowledged, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
And it was like, I really resonate with what you're saying. It's, I, even if the only people who really know who I am is in the Bridges of Meaning sphere and on YouTube, our little corner, that's fine. It's like, you guys, like, we get each other kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
there's a
it,
blessing to it because I look at
yes,
I look at Jordan Peterson and his trajectory, and it's sort of like everybody likes to give him a hard time that, oh, he's too harsh, he's this, that. And it's like, I don't disagree fully in some of those things, but I
Yeah,
also don't, I don't, I can't imagine what it would be like to have such a big platform with so many people actively fighting against me. I don't know
yeah,
how I would respond to that. And so
yeah,
I have a sympathy and a grace for it. And I say, so it's sort of like
yeah,
this the status rocket is not the blessing a lot of
yeah,
people think it is, especially people chasing viral
yeah.
sensation
The
world.
marketing people really want you to be, you know, have the status rocket so they can sell more books.
Yeah,
But it's
but
like
it's
there's a personal cost to it that, like, Paul Van der Klee says, the blessings of being small, you
well, and
know.
there is a blessing to small growth too, even if you do
Yeah,
eventually get large. There are
yeah,
several channels throughout YouTube who they never had this big viral success, but they were just consistent and
mm,
slowly gaining and have grown to these platforms that have millions but have
yeah,
really focused on the value first and not strictly the virality. And I
yeah,
think that is a clearer, better path to how do you do this thing sustainably if you want to make it a job. And if you
yeah,
don't want to make it a job, how do you do it without getting caught up in some weird game that the
yeah,
algorithm wants you to play, that you
yeah,
as a human want you to play because you don't
yeah,
want to make it feel like you're wasting your time,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. I kind of was settling in on just trying to create what I think I would like to create
Hmm.
and let everything kind of go from there
Yeah.
and see what happens kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to do what the books recommend. I stink at the consistency part.
That's the hardest part. I
It
really do.
is.
I really
I'm
do
like,
believe that. That's
oh,
the
jeez.
hardest part.
Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to try to create stuff that I think resonates with myself and hopefully might resonate with other people who like mine and see where it leads. And um, trying to think of like other things and figure it out as I go because that's really like you saying I don't have it all figured out and I'm like I've read so many books. I know what they say. I may not do it exactly what they say to do because
Yeah.
of many different reasons. And
Well,
one
and
of
it
them is like staying true to myself as well as life circumstances influencing what I can and can't do. And just like, I know if I could go chasing after that brass ring, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I know it's not the right thing to do, and I won't be happy. My dad talked about you. You want to make sure that if you climb a ladder, it's against the wall that you want it to be against.
yeah.
And I was like, and I thought I really took that to heart when I was a preteen when he told me that. I'm like, oh, because he became very well known as a voiceover teacher, and that's all he became well known for. And he did it incredibly well. But his heart is he wanted to create and do movies, which unfortunately he never was able to do his own movies because he passed away.
Mm.
Um, but he's kind of like a combination between, creatively speaking, between C.S. Lewis, Charles Williams. I mean, not Charles Williams. C.S. Lewis, Jerry Lewis, and Woody Allen. You know, so he was a very eclectic person, but he had a lot of talent and stuff. And I think there's a lot of people like you and my dad who just have a lot of talent and creativity, and um, you never make it big. Maybe for you, not right now. Um, but making it big doesn't always have everything that's cracked up for it. From all the stories of people who make it big and are not happy and satisfied with it,
Yeah.
there's just that's why I was like, I want to have meaning. I'd like to make more friends in our little area and also people outside of our corner that and have meaningful conversations like we're having now. And I think that'll be most fulfilling for me is like that will touch a spot in my heart that I don't have with my groups of friends my as eclectic and wonderful as my geek groups are, my geek friends are, they don't understand this corner of the internet, and this is a big part of who I am.
It's very niche.
And it's very strange. It's different. I tell them about all the people, and they're like, "Oh, okay." They're happy. They were like tickled pink that I wrote about them in my book, and I got permission to do that. I specifically didn't put any names because I wanted to be respectful of their privacy and stuff. Um, but they think they get the biggest kick out of it. It's like, I because for me, both are part of who I am, and we have that dynamic is like, especially if you're an eclectic person, you are involved in different things and they don't connect, but the only connection is you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like really wild. Like, oh, okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, we could probably go on about all this stuff, but what would you like to talk about next?
Well, I don't know. I feel like maybe we should land the plane.
Sure.
Um, yeah, I just getting a little late here, but I've really enjoyed this. Is there any last thoughts that you have? Something you didn't get to say that you want to share?
Um, I do want to do a plug for the book,
Yeah.
but I'll make it tasteful.
Yes, please go
Um,
for it. Even if
okay.
it's untasteful, plug away.
Okay. So, the Writers in Meaning, an anthology on community. You can find out all the details on writersinmeaning.com. Um, Not everybody is going to want to read this book. That's totally okay. You don't have to. But we created it for several reasons. One is that we would have a book for our community and explaining about community and the estuary and also our eclectic nature. It's a fun short read. It's a great gift for people who outside of a community. It's something new and interesting, um, of like what it's all about. This is not trying to get people into our community. This is trying to help people understand estuary and the eclectic nature of people to have meaningful conversations with each other. And they can do this without being part of the whole Peterson fear thing. So this is a great gift to give to someone who might be curious about estuary and the eclectic nature of our arena, and whatever you like to call it. Um, it's a short read, and also, uh, it's kind of like a nice wind down book for at night when you just want to read a chapter or two or something, and you just want to just relax and chill. This is a really great book for that. Um, but feel free to recommend it. If you've read it, please give us a review if possible, either on Amazon or Goodreads. Um, and if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is on the website, writersandmeaning.com. I'll send Cassidy a short blurb and a link so you can just contact us as you wish. Um, and thanks for you, Cassidy, for everything. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
And the proceeds of the book are going to Paul Vanderklay's ministry, right?
Yes. Yeah, we decided we were not going to worry about money, and we wanted to support Paul because he was our inspiration for doing the book, and he's our inspiration to actually form community and reach out to each other instead of chasing talking to him. So, and we wanted to, he's given so much to us as an online community. We wanted to give back to his ministry as his church, so that they can keep doing what they do.
Yeah. No, I think that's lovely. I mean, Paul, Paul Vanderklay, has flipped my world upside down, and so
Yeah.
I love finding ways to support him and what he's done because
Yes.
I think he's doing something very interesting that, yeah, is somewhere in that sense of like very valuable, but not
Hmm.
yet incredibly viral. And whether it will
Right.
ever be viral or not, I don't think that matters. The
Right.
valuableness is something so beautiful. So I
Yeah.
think that's really great. But no,
Thank you.
thank you so much for coming and having a conversation. This was really lovely. And yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, maybe we can have another conversation sometime.
Oh, I'd love it. Yeah, you're wonderful to chat with. I really appreciate it. I'm kind of like-minded. My family is both Christian and conservative in the media industry, so we back in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, we knew what it was like, to be surrounded by people who were great, wonderful people. but they have a different worldview, and they didn't quite have that altruistic perspective of our worldview. And so it's nice to be able to talk with somebody like mine, but
Yeah.
also understand the beautiful nature of working in the creative fields.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear your story, and yeah, I love how much you love your father and how much
Thank
he's
you.
inspired you. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll definitely have to have another conversation sometime. That
Oh,
would be
yeah.
lovely.
That, that would be lovely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.